Some men build fences. I built a business, brick by brick, and I never once thought I'd need a fence around it until my own daughter handed me a for sale sign and called it a favor. The call came in at 7:52 on a Thursday, right as I was pouring coffee into the same chipped mug I'd used since Linda passed. My daughter's name lit up the screen. Dad, she said. No hello. No how are you. We've talked it over. We're putting Cross Creek hardware on the market. You've got until the end of the month to clear out your office. I set the mug down slow. She had no idea which building she was talking about. My name is Walt Herron. I'm 67 years old, a hardware man my whole life, father to one daughter, Sarah, and a man who learned a long time ago that the people who love you the loudest aren't always the ones who love you the most carefully. I moved to Millhaven, Ohio, in 1979, the same spring I married Linda. We bought a narrow two-story on Poplar Street, raised Sarah in that house, buried 2 cats and a beagle named Duke in the backyard, and built the kind of life people don't know they're supposed to be grateful for until it's gone. But this isn't a story about that house, or even really about Sarah, though she's at the center of it. This is a story about 2 hardware stores, one daughter who moved too fast, and an old man who'd been quietly planning 3 moves ahead the whole time. Grab a coffee. This one takes a while, and it's worth every minute. If you've got a moment, hit that like button and tell me where you're tuning in from tonight. I like knowing who's sitting with me. The store, everybody in Millhaven knew, the one with my name stenciled on the front window, Herron's Hardware, sat on Route 12, right where the old grain elevator used to stand before they tore it down in the 90s. I opened that store in 1985 with $18,000. I'd saved working the counter at a lumber yard in Zanesville for 11 years. Linda thought I was out of my mind. Walt, she said, you're going to lose everything we have. I told her. Give me 15 years. She didn't roll her eyes. Exactly. She just handed me a thermos of coffee and told me not to be stupid about it. That was Linda's version of faith. I built that business with these 2 hands, hired my first employee the 2nd year, hired my second the 4th. Sarah grew up sweeping that floor after school, counting nails into little paper bags for nickels I'd slip her when her mother wasn't looking. Every 4th of July, we closed early and had the whole street over for a cookout in the parking lot. When Linda got sick, in 2016, Sarah started coming in on weekends just to sit behind the register with me, not really working, just being there. We didn't talk much those Saturdays. We didn't need to. When Linda passed in 2017, that store became sacred ground for me, the one place I could still hear her laugh if I stood quiet enough by the paint counter. What I never told Sarah, what I never told a living soul except one man, was that 8 months after the funeral, I bought a second building. But we'll get to that. By last year, Sarah was 34, married 3 years to a man named Derek, who had a talent for spending money faster than most people can count it, and a habit of talking about our future in a way that always seemed to mean my money, not his. I loved my daughter. I want to be honest about that from the start, because nothing that follows changes it. I loved her the way you love the one thing you built that still has a heartbeat. But I'd watched something shift in her over the last few years, slow, the way a porch step rots from underneath before you ever see the crack. She started asking about the business at Christmas dinner. Started wondering, real casual, what my plans were. Started steering conversations toward the store like a woman who'd already done some arithmetic in her head. I noticed. I didn't say anything. I just watched. That Thursday morning, cool enough that the Ohio fog was still sitting low over the fields like it was waiting on something, my phone had already delivered its blow by 7:52. But I haven't told you yet what happened 2 days before that, because that's really where this story starts. Sarah called on a Tuesday evening. Her voice had that tone I knew from when she was 15 and had wrecked the car and needed to explain it before her mother found out. Hey, Dad. Too bright. Too rehearsed. Sarah. I turned the TV down. You sound like you're about to tell me something. Derek and I have been talking. Here we go. Okay, I said. About what? About the store. The one on Route 12. I set my glass down slow. What about it? Dad, look, you're 67. You're down there alone most days. The insurance has gone up. The roof needs work. And I mean, when's the last time you actually took a real day off? Tuesday, I said. Right, but Dad. Her voice went flat and careful, the voice of somebody reciting something they'd practiced in the car. Derek and I think it's time to sell it. You think it's time, I repeated. It makes sense financially. Commercial property on 12 is worth real money now with the new outlet mall going in. We talked to somebody, a broker, Nancy Kessler, over in Coshocton. She thinks we could get 420, maybe 450. We talked to somebody. I set my coffee down even slower this time. When did you talk to a broker, Sarah? Silence. Sarah. We just wanted information, Dad, before we brought it to you, so you'd have the whole picture. The whole picture. My daughter got a broker before she got my permission. Let that land for a second, the way it landed on me. And Derek's on board with all this? I asked, though I already knew the answer sitting in my chest like a stone. We both think it's the smart move. I've heard enough, I told her, and I hung up. I sat on my porch for the better part of an hour, just me and a mourning dove somewhere in the maple tree, and a kind of quiet that has actual weight to it, the kind that presses flat against your sternum. Was I angry? Not yet. Was I hurt? Son, I was gutted. 67 years old, and my own daughter had gone behind my back, hired a broker, and started deciding the fate of something I'd built with my bare hands before I'd even been asked a single question. But here's the thing about being 67 that nobody warns you about. You stop reacting so fast. You start responding instead. There's a real difference between the two, and it took me most of my life to learn it. I went inside, poured a coffee I didn't need, sat down at my kitchen table on Poplar Street, and opened the bottom drawer of the roll-top desk that used to be my father's. Linda called that drawer my serious drawer, because nothing light ever came out of it. Inside was a folder. Not the Herron's hardware deed. Sarah knew about that building. This folder held a different address, a different town, an entirely different story that nobody in my family had ever laid eyes on. I read through it slow, even though I'd had it memorized for years. I smiled for the first time that whole miserable morning. 2 days later came the 7:52 call. Sarah's voice, calm, decided. The voice of someone who thought the matter was already settled. Dad, we've talked it over. We're listing the store. Nancy's already got the paperwork moving. You've got until the end of the month to clear your office out. A short pause. We're doing this whether you're on board or not. I let the silence stretch out a beat longer than comfortable. Then I said, Sarah, honey, which store do you think I'm standing in right now? There's a particular kind of quiet that isn't empty. It's loaded, like the second before a glass slips off a counter and you can't catch it. That's the quiet Sarah gave me. I counted it out. 1, 2, 3. Dad, what are you? You're at Herron's, obviously. I didn't say that. Then where are you? I'm exactly where I need to be, sweetheart. I leaned back in my chair, the wood giving that old, comfortable creak. You go right ahead and list Herron's. You and Nancy Kessler out of Coshocton. Go on and do all that. Dad, you're not making sense. I'm making plenty of sense, I said. You're just not used to me having a plan you don't know about. I told her we'd talk soon, and I hung up. Let her sit with that a while. Now let me tell you about the second building, because this is where the whole thing turns. In the winter of 2018, about 8 months after we put Linda in the ground, I took a drive with no destination in mind. Just me, my truck, and a half tank of gas, out on those back roads, where Ohio in February looks both beautiful and half dead at the same time. I ended up 38 miles east of Millhaven, out past the Coleman Quarry, in a little crossroads town called Averton that most people drive through without ever slowing down. There was an old feed and seed building for sale on the corner lot, brick, 2 stories, good bones, sitting right on the town square where foot traffic still meant something. The kind of building any tradesman worth his salt would recognize as a steal the second he walked in. I bought it in March of 2018 for $145,000. Linda and I had been savers our whole married life. We drove, used trucks, we paid cash. We never once bought something we couldn't cover outright. Sarah used to call that old-fashioned. Sarah thought a lot of things. I put the Averton building into an irrevocable trust and named it the Linda Herron Family Trust, myself as lifetime beneficiary, handled by an estate attorney in Columbus that nobody in my family had ever met. I told exactly one person on this earth about that building. Not Sarah, not Derek. My old friend Otis B. Rant, retired title examiner, 71 years old. A man who understood property records the way some men understand scripture chapter, verse, and every consequence buried in the footnotes. Otis kept that secret for 7 years, and never once asked me why. That's what a real friend looks like. Sarah had spent those 7 years coming around Herons on Route 12, asking about my retirement plans, eyeing that store like it was an inheritance she was already halfway to cashing. And the whole time, the real asset was sitting 38 miles away in Averton, quiet, patient, waiting, same as me. The listing went up on a Friday. I know because Otis called me himself. Walt. His voice had that particular weight to it. Herron's just hit the MLS. Listed with Sarah Herron Voss as co-owner. Asking price $440. I exhaled slow. How fast is it moving? Already got 2 showing requests. That corridor's hot with the outlet mall coming. Nancy's a decent broker. Might move inside a month. All right, I said. Let it run. You sure about that, Walt? I'm sure. If it closes, Otis. Let it run. He went quiet a second. You're a cold man sometimes, Walt Herron. I'm a careful man, I told him. There's a difference. Now here's something important. Something neither Sarah nor Derek understood going in. Yes, I was on the Herron's hardware deed as co-owner with Sarah. An arrangement I'd set up years back thinking it'd simplify things down the road. What I never explained to her, because she never asked, was that under Ohio law, joint ownership on a commercial property deed does not let one party unilaterally authorize a sale. Every owner has to sign the closing documents. Every single one, meaning me. Nancy Kessler, to her credit, actually knew this. She'd asked Sarah point blank, early on, whether all owners were aligned on the sale, and Sarah had told her in writing. In an email, Nancy kept on file that her father was fully supportive and just needed to be looped in on logistics. That wasn't true, not one word of it, but Nancy had no reason to doubt a client telling her that, and she listed the property in good faith, scheduled showings, and had an offer inside 16 days. A young couple out of Columbus, Marcus and Priya Reyes, mid-30s, looking to open a specialty bakery and needed street-level retail space with good bones. Good people, from what I could tell later. Wrong deal entirely. Their offer came in at $412,000. Sarah called me, nearly vibrating through the phone. Dad, we got an offer, a strong one, 412. Dad, $412,000. I heard you the first time, Sarah. We just need your signature on the... She stopped. I could hear the gears turning, that little hitch when someone realizes the room they walked into isn't shaped the way they thought. On the closing paperwork. There it was. Do I said. Dad, it's just a formality. You're a co-owner, so they need everybody's signature. It's just how it works. I let that sit a moment, let her hear her own words echo back at her. Sarah, I said finally, do you remember what I asked you last week? What? I asked which store you thought I was calling from. Dad, what does that have to do with anything? Everything, I said. It has everything to do with everything. I'll call you Thursday. The Rises needed an answer by Thursday. I drove to Columbus. I had a 10 o'clock with my estate attorney, Renata Boyd, 51 years old, second generation out of a family of Ohio farmers, the sharpest real estate mind I'd ever hired, and a woman who genuinely enjoyed a well-built legal surprise the way some people enjoy a good crossword. I laid the whole thing out for her across her conference table, the listing, the offer, Sarah's calls, the deed structure, all of it. Renata leaned back, fingers steepled, and studied me like a chess player 3 moves from checkmate. Walt, she said slowly, they listed a property they cannot legally sell without you. Correct. And the buyers are sitting at 412, waiting on a closing date. Correct. And your daughter told her broker you were fully supportive. Her exact words, apparently. Not quite a smile, but close. And the Averton building, irrevocable trust, Linda Herron Family Trust, recorded March of 2018, Franklin County. Untouchable, she nodded slow. So what exactly is it you want to do, Walt? I folded my hands. I want to let it run all the way to the closing table, I said. I want Sarah to shake that young couple's hand. I want Derek standing there in his good sport coat. I want Nancy Kessler to lay her folder out on that table like everything's settled. I paused. And then I want you to make one phone call. Renata studied me a long moment. You planned this, she said. I planned for the possibility. I corrected her. There's a difference. She actually laughed. Walt Herron, you are a genuinely frightening man. I'm a careful man, Renata. She reached for her legal pad. All right, let's talk about that phone call. The closing was set for a Monday morning, 9 sharp, at a title company called Coshocton Land and Title. Clean little office, decent coffee, the kind of place where a great deal of money changes hands without much ceremony at all. Sarah had called me twice over the weekend just to confirm I'd show up. Once to ask if I needed directions to a title office 40 minutes from my own front door. She thought the old man was losing his grip. I told her I'd be there. I was there 11 minutes early. Sarah walked in 3 minutes to 9, wearing a blazer I'd never seen, Derek trailing behind her with his hands jammed in his pockets, eyes bouncing around the room, the way Derek's eyes always did when he was out of his depth. The Rieses were already seated, pleasant-looking people, Marcus with a firm handshake and the energy of a man who'd been waiting weeks for this morning. Nancy Kessler sat at the head of the table with her folder, organized, ready. The title officer, a woman named Deb Ashworth, had her documents stacked in neat little piles. I sat in the corner with my coffee. Sarah spotted me and visibly relaxed, her shoulders dropping. She even smiled that particular smile of somebody who believes the hard part is already behind them. Dad. She crossed the room, hand out. So glad you made it. I shook it. Wouldn't miss it. We're good then? We're good, Sarah, I said quiet. She went back to her seat. Deb Ashworth started her opening remarks. Nancy uncapped her pen. Marcus Reyes leaned forward. Ready. And then my phone buzzed. A text from Renata Boyd. Ready when you are. I stood up. Every head at that table turned. Walt? Deb said. Is everything? I apologize, I said, calm as a church pew. There's a call I need to take. My attorney. She needs a word with someone at this table. I looked straight at Nancy Kessler. Specifically you. Nancy blinked. Me? You. Sarah half rose out of her chair. Dad, what is going on? Sit down, Sarah. Something in my voice made her sit right back down. I stepped into the hallway and called Renata. 30 seconds later, I walked back in and handed Nancy my phone. I watched her face while Renata talked, watched the color drain out of it, watched the pen go still in her hand, watched the exact moment a professional realizes the deal she built is standing on nothing but air. Nancy said 4 words into the phone. Just 4. Say that again, please. A short pause, then nothing. She handed my phone back and looked at Sarah, then at the documents on the table, then at Marcus Reyes, whose expression had shifted from excitement to alarm in about 4 seconds flat. Mrs. Voss. Nancy said, and she was talking to Sarah now, not me. This closing cannot proceed. Marcus's chair scraped back hard. I'm sorry, what? The property can't transfer without full, verified consent from every listed owner, Nancy said, her voice tight and controlled. That consent was never actually secured from Mr. Herron. There's a structural problem here that should have been caught before we ever listed. Should have been caught before listing. That's professional language for somebody lied to me. Sarah hadn't moved. Still in her new blazer. Still staring at the table like it might open up and offer her a way out. Derek sat beside her, arms crossed, looking at absolutely nothing. I stayed put in my corner. I didn't gloat. I didn't grandstand. I drank my coffee and waited, because the story wasn't finished, not by a long shot. Renata Boyd walked in at 9:19, having driven up from Columbus. Gray suit, leather briefcase, the unhurried walk of a woman exactly where she'd intended to be all along. She shook my hand first, set her briefcase down, snapped it open, and laid 2 documents side by side in the center of the table like a dealer setting cards. Everyone, she said, taking in the whole room, the Rieses, Nancy, Deb, Sarah, Derek. My name is Renata Boyd. I'm Mr. Herron's attorney, and I'd like to walk you through exactly where things stand, because clarity is going to help all of us this morning. She tapped the first document. This is the deed for Herron's hardware joint ownership between Walt Herron and Sarah Herron Voss, established in 2011. Under Ohio law, a jointly held commercial property requires documented, unanimous consent from every owner before any transfer of title. That consent was never obtained from Mr. Herron. The listing was premature. This contract is unenforceable. This closing does not happen today. Dead silence around that table. Marcus Reyes, to his credit, looked like a man who understood he'd walked into somebody else's storm. He touched Priya's hand. She nodded once. "Miss Boyd," Marcus said, composed again. "What are our options here?" Renata turned to him with the full weight of her attention. "You have a legitimate claim against the listing agent and potentially the sellers, meaning Mrs. Voss, for entering a purchase agreement on a property she didn't have sole authority to sell. Your inspection costs, your appraisal, your legal fees, all of that is recoverable." A short pause. "I'd suggest speaking with your own counsel, which I suspect you're already doing." Marcus was already reaching for his phone. Renata snapped her briefcase shut, and that, more or less, was that. Nancy Kessler left first, shook no one's hand, said one clipped word to Deb about following up Tuesday. The door closed behind her with the exact sound of a woman about to have a very bad phone call with her broker license attorney. The Rieses left next. Marcus stopped at the door, turned back, and looked at me, not at Sarah, at me. "I'm sorry you're going through this," he said. I nodded. "Enjoy whatever building you end up finding, Marcus." He almost smiled. Almost. Then they were gone. Deb gathered her paperwork with the quiet efficiency of a woman who'd watched deals collapse before and knew lingering never helped anyone, out in under 3 minutes. Then it was just us. Me, Renata, Sarah, Derek. Renata glanced at me. I gave her a small nod. She excused herself into the hallway and shut the door with the quiet click of somebody who knows a room needs privacy. Sarah spoke first. "So that's it?" Her voice had changed completely. The confidence bled out of it, something younger and rawer underneath. You let it get all the way here. Let us list it. Let us get an offer. Let us sit at this table like idiots." "Yes." "Dad?" "Yes, Sarah." I let it happen. She stood, walked to the window, stood with her back to me, arms wrapped around herself, staring at the parking lot. "You could have stopped at any time," she said. "I could have. You could have called after that first conversation and said, 'Sarah, you cannot sell that store without me.' You could have just said that." "I could have," I said again. She turned around, and I want to be careful how I describe what I saw on her face, because it wasn't only anger, it wasn't only embarrassment. It was something more tangled than both a woman who'd looked in a mirror and seen something she hadn't braced herself for. "Why didn't you?" she asked. I leaned forward. "Because you needed to see it," I told her. "Not hear it. See it. All the way to the end." I held her eyes. "You hired a broker before you asked your father's permission. You told that broker I was fully on board when you knew that wasn't true. You put me on notice that I had until the end of the month to clear out of something I built with these 2 hands." I paused. "What exactly did you think was going to happen, Sarah?" She had no answer for that. "Sit down," I said. Not unkind, just final. She sat. I stood at the head of the table where Deb had been organizing paperwork 20 minutes earlier, and I looked at my daughter and her husband, really looked at them. Sarah, in her new blazer, Derek with his arms still crossed like a man bracing for a hit he knew was coming. I took my time. "I'm going to say some things," I told them, "and I need you both to just listen. Can you do that?" Derek nodded fast. Sarah stared at the table, then nodded once, slow. I pulled out the chair across from them and sat, not because I was tired, but because I wanted to be eye level, father to daughter, not judge to defendant. "I'm not going anywhere," I said. "I'll be behind that counter every single morning until my body tells me otherwise." "You're welcome there anytime, Sarah. That hasn't changed, and it isn't going to." Something in her face loosened just slightly. "Now," I said, "Nancy's going to be dealing with a formal complaint, most likely, and that's between her and the Rieses' attorney. But Sarah, the Rieses have a real claim, and it's against you, Because you're the one who signed the listing agreement and told a broker in writing that I was fully supportive when you knew good and well I wasn't. I paused. Renata thinks their damages, inspection, appraisal, legal fees come out somewhere between $14,000 and $20,000. Sarah's jaw tightened. That's not a number that ruins you, I said. But it's not nothing either. And Sarah. I waited until she looked up. Derek's going to find out exactly how this played out, if he doesn't already understand it sitting right here. Something moved fast across Derek's face, like a shadow passing. You'd already spent that 412 in your head, hadn't you? I said. Both of you. Neither of them said a word, which was its own kind of answer. That conversation's yours to have, I said. I won't put myself in the middle of your marriage. But I want you to understand something clearly. Every consequence sitting on this table right now has your name on it, Sarah, not mine. Because you moved first, and you moved without ever asking the one person whose name was actually on that deed. I turned to Derek. I know you didn't start this, I said. I know Sarah came to you with most of this already decided, and you went along because that's easier than pushing back on your own wife. That's on you too, though, Derek. You're 36 years old. You knew this wasn't clean. I could hear it in how careful Sarah sounded on that first call, and neither of you stopped to ask whether it was right. Derek exhaled, shaky. I know, he said quietly. I know, Walt. Good, I said. Then what I'm about to tell you won't come as a surprise. I reached into my jacket and set a single folded document on the table between us. I didn't open it yet, just let it sit there. Both of them looked at it like it might bite. I spent yesterday afternoon with Renata, I said. We made some changes. Sarah's eyes came up slow. What kind of changes? The kind a man makes, I said, when he realizes he needs to be more deliberate about what he leaves behind. I kept my voice level. Herron's hardware, the one you listed, the one you were ready to hand a stranger the keys to without my knowledge. I've restructured that deed. It's held solely in my name now. Your name's been removed. Dead silence. Dad, it's done, Sarah. Already recorded at the county courthouse as of yesterday afternoon. I looked at her, steady. You wanted to sell it so badly. Now you can't, because it isn't yours to sell anymore. Truth is, it never fully was. Now the paperwork just agrees with that. Sarah's hand curled slowly on the table, not into a fist exactly, more the way a hand curls when it's absorbing something that actually hurts. And the Averton building? I went on. The trust building. I've updated the successor beneficiary language on that one too. I unfolded the second document and slid it into the center of the table where they could both see it without reaching. Otis Brandt's granddaughter runs a small business incubator out of Columbus. They help first-generation entrepreneurs, folks who'd never get a commercial loan otherwise get into affordable retail space. When I'm gone, the Averton building goes to them. The air went out of that room slow, like a tire losing pressure, not all at once. Two people realizing at the same moment that the thing they'd been circling for years, the thing that had made them hire a broker and sign papers behind my back and put a deadline on their own father, was never going to have their names on it. Not now. Not ever. Sarah pushed back from the table and walked to the window again. Same window, same parking lot, but everything past the glass had shifted somehow. A non-profit, she said flat. A non-profit, I confirmed. Dad. She turned around, and here's where I want to be exact about what I saw, because it wasn't rage exactly. It wasn't the caught-in-the-act frustration I'd braced for. It was something rawer than that. Something I hadn't seen on her face since she was maybe 12 years old and had broken something of her mother's she couldn't fix. I didn't think it would go this far, she said. I know you didn't, I said. I thought we were helping. The insurance, the roof, you being down there alone all the time. Sarah, my voice was gentle, but it didn't bend. You hired a broker before you asked your father. Whatever story you've told yourself about your intentions, that's the plain truth of what happened. A person who's actually trying to help asks first. Derek was quiet, jaw working, looking at his own hands. Is there anything left? Sarah asked, and she meant it the way a daughter means it, not the way an heir means it. For a second, she wasn't 34 in a new blazer. She was 7 years old again, standing in the doorway of the shop in a coat 2 sizes too big, watching me sweep up at closing time. Lord, it's something what time does to people, what fear does, what the worry of being left behind does to daughters who were once just little girls handing their fathers nails. I looked at her a long moment, and I laughed, not big, not cruel, just that low, quiet laugh that starts somewhere deep and comes up slow. The kind Linda used to say meant I knew something nobody else in the room had figured out yet. Sarah recognized it right away. Her eyes changed. Good. She should be paying attention. I let the laugh settle, let the room go quiet around it, then leaned forward and folded my hands one last time. Sarah, I said, even, unhurried. The Averton building got appraised last month. You want to know what Renata's appraiser came back with? She said nothing, waiting. $940,000. The number landed like a stone dropped in still water, and I watched the ripple move across both their faces. That building, I said, letting every word have room to breathe, the one you never even knew existed, sitting on that corner square in Averton, with good bones and better tenants than you'd ever imagine, that was always meant to be yours eventually. Yours and whatever family you built. I paused. You were about to help sell Herons for 412. I let that number sit next to the other one so she could feel the whole distance between them. You'd have walked away with maybe 280 after the broker's cut and the mess with the Riaces. You threw away $940,000 to chase 280. Sarah made a sound that wasn't quite words, the kind that comes out of a person when something lands somewhere they weren't guarding. I wasn't hiding that building to punish you, I said quiet. I bought it because I needed something that was still just mine. Something that still felt like your mother. Something nobody could put a price tag on and argue me down from. I paused. But I always meant for it to reach you eventually, when I was gone, when the time was right. That's all this ever was. You just got impatient, and you rushed the timeline, and in doing that you changed the whole destination. I buttoned my jacket. $940,000, I said one more time, not to twist anything further, just so it was real to her, fully real, the way consequences need to be before they mean a thing. That was going to be yours. I hope 412 was worth it. I picked up my coffee for the last time. Cold by then. I drank it anyway. Then I tucked the document back into my jacket pocket. You're still my daughter, I said. That much doesn't have a deed attached to it. Nobody can list that or sell it or take it off a table. But it has to be earned back, same as anything worth having. I looked at Derek. Get yourselves a good attorney today, not next week. Then to Sarah. And you go home and sit with what you learned about yourself today. Don't run from it. Just sit with it a while. I walked toward the door. Dad. Sarah's voice cracked at the edges. I stopped, turned back. We're sorry, she said, and I could tell she meant it for both of them. Derek's shoulders dropped a fraction at the window, his version of agreeing, his version of sorry. I nodded once. I know you are, I said quiet. I know. Renata was waiting in the hallway, hands in her coat pockets like a woman with nowhere better to be. How'd it go? She asked. About like it needed to, I said. We walked out together into a cold Ohio morning. I sat in my truck a minute before I turned the key. Then I drove east, past the quarry, past the stretch of county road where the tree line swallows the light early in winter, 38 miles out to Averton, and I pulled up in front of that brick building just as the last of the afternoon sun went flat and gold across the town square. I let myself in with my own key, stood in the middle of that empty first floor, just me and the quiet, the kind of quiet that costs you nothing and means absolutely everything. Linda, I thought, you'd have had plenty to say about all this. You'd have shaken your head at Sarah, felt every bit of Derek's discomfort, probably told me I was too deliberate for my own good. Then you'd have handed me a thermos and told me to lock up before dark. Herron's Hardware still stands right where it always has, out on Route 12, past where the grain elevator used to be. It's got my name on the deed now, just mine, the way it honestly always should have stayed. Sarah called Renata's office 4 days later about the Reyes's claim. The settlement landed at $17,000. Derek and Sarah are covering it together, which is more than I expected, and about exactly what they owe each other, working through it. Sarah called me the following Sunday. No agenda, No ask, just her voice and mine, and 45 minutes of the kind of conversation we used to have before any of this got in the way. That was a start. Nancy Kessler had a formal complaint filed against her license with the Ohio Division of Real Estate. I didn't file it. The Ryeses did. Some consequences arrive without any help from me at all. The Averton building sits exactly where it's always sat, on that quiet town square, inside a trust nobody can touch. When I'm gone, it goes to people who'll actually build something with it. Otis came by last month, and we stood in that empty storefront and watched the light change over the square and didn't say much of anything for a good long while. That's the thing about real friends and real places and a life built slow and guarded close. They don't need many words. They just need to last, and this one will. If this one got to you, hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't, and tell me down in the comments where you're listening from tonight. I'll see you on the next one.